Hey everyone, welcome to the Canine Culture Podcast, where we talk about everything dog. Q&As with veterinarian professionals, rescue operators, everyday topics. We cover everything dog on this podcast. So make sure you subscribe to the Canine Culture Podcast on your favorite podcast platform, and make sure you're following us on social media on both Instagram and Facebook. Thanks again for listening. Now here's that next episode. Hey everyone, welcome to the Canine Culture Podcast. This is your host, Brittany, and today we are joined by Dr. Cliff. He is known as the Worldwide Vet. So Dr. Cliff, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, I was excited to hear a little bit about you, and I only got a small snippet. But what I saw, I was like, wait a second, what does he do? So before we get into all of that, let's talk a little bit about your practice as a vet, what inspired you to become a vet, and then we'll work our way into your adventures. So we'll just start at the beginning.
Yeah. So I became a vet in '98. It's been a little bit over half my life now. I graduated from the University of Guelph, OVC, one of the best schools in the world. Very proud of that. And I was thinking I was going to be just a regular cat and dog vet. I bought a practice here in Markham, which is just north of Toronto. I live in Toronto. And then I we joked that it was a midlife crisis that I started traveling, but I'll take it as a midlife opportunity as well instead. And as far as being a vet, I was one of the rare people in my class that didn't know I wanted to be a veterinarian until sort of the last minute, until I sort of started going to university. It was always on my radar, but I was actually really seriously thinking about being a teacher, a marine biologist, or a police officer. So maybe I took the love of zoology and biology and animals, the teaching aspect of being a teacher, and the protection aspect of being a vet or being a police officer, and here I am. But it's funny, all of my teachers and all of my sort of friends from high school and my teachers even from primary school have said to me over the years they knew I was going to be a veterinarian even when I was 7, 8, 9 years old. I was just that kid that took care of all the animals and just constantly talked about the science of animals instead of talking about sports. And I'm glad they figured it out for me because I love what I do.
Yeah, that's amazing. I thought I wanted to be a vet growing up, but then I found out that vets have to give shots to animals, and I was like, "Oh, that's not for me. Like I'm really not going to give any needles to any of the animals. I'll just pet them and then send them on the way." And I realized that was not going to be a fruitful career.
No,
So I
no,
love
not
that
right yet.
I'm glad that you were able to recognize that and really turn that into something. Now, let's talk about your pivot from traditional vet work, as we would like to think about it, dogs, cats in a local clinic, to this global rescue work, this international wildlife work. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, the crazy idea started probably about 12 or 13 years ago. I had done this little community TV show called Your Pet, Your Vet. It was just like local, local regional cable TV where people called
Hmm.
in and asked questions. But I loved it, and this TV bug bit me. And so I kept chasing this idea of trying to create a TV show, but it had to be something unique. And the short end of the story is I realized that sort of a fish out of water travel adventure TV show would be this great idea. So 9 years ago, I traveled to Jamaica, Kingston, Jamaica, for 3 weeks of volunteer work. And although I worked very hard for those 3 weeks, it was also to film my adventures. I hired, air quotes, hired some newly graduated film students. I said, look, I can't pay you any money, but I'm going to give you a free trip to Jamaica, and I'll feed you, and I'll give you beer and booze on the weekends. And for some reason, they thought it was a great idea.
Hey, sign me up. That sounds
Yeah,
perfect.
there you go. It was a lot of fun, and I have tried to pitch, and I'm still working with some broadcasters to try and develop this show. But I really fell in love with the travel aspect. I really fell in love with the wildlife aspect. On my second or third day, I was asked to do surgery on an American crocodile. I had
Wow.
never done surgery on a reptile before. And I thought I had to remove its eye. It had unfortunately been shot by a frightened farmer with a spear gun. And the technicians just said, "Look, removing an eye on a crocodile is the same as removing an eye on a dog. Just don't get bit either way, and just pretend it's a scaly dog." And they were right. And so again, I got bit by this bug, and since then I've traveled as far as India, down south to Panama, Ukraine a couple of times during the current war, and even up to the Arctic Circle in northern Canada, where there's hardly any sun, and I go in January for whatever reason, because I'm the only vet who'll go up there in January. So we've done almost every corner of the globe.
That's amazing. That's so fun. And I have to ask because this is something I've been thinking about. When you go on these trips, are you taking all of your equipment with you? Like, are you just trying to pack, like, I'm going to need these scissors, these needles, these IV bags? Like, what does that look like for you?
So my first trip again was to Jamaica, and I was working with the Jamaican SPCA, and so I knew they had equipment for me. And there's a lot of strict rules about bringing drugs into Jamaica, just as much as there's rules about bringing drugs out. And I didn't want to have the hassle, so I actually didn't bring much. I did ask them what they needed, and they had your regular surgical tools. It was funny. The number one thing they needed were e-collars, like the cones of
Oh,
shame. They couldn't
right.
get them. It was so difficult. They were making them out of buckets. They would cut holes in buckets and then sort of lace them to the dog's collar. So out of everything I had in my bag, that was the most valuable. And then since then, I have always worked with some sort of rescue. And there have been times I've brought in medications. I've got a funny story about how I snuck drugs into Ukraine. And then they're like, "No, you can't take it back. We're going to keep this." So I try and travel really light. My daughter comes with me, and occasionally my son has joined me. But we go really, really light. We work 14, 15-hour days, no vacationing, and we do with what they have, because I'm working with either technicians, animal rescues, or other veterinarians from that country, and I
Hmm.
want to be able to show them and improve on what they're doing with what they have at hand.
Right.
Now I end up learning arguably a lot more than they learn from me. I learn from them, but it's a real lean sort of process. I just bring sort of the bare necessities and go from there.
Okay. That's interesting, but that does make sense. Why bring a bunch of stuff if they're learning from you and then they won't have that later? You need to work with what you have there. So that makes perfect
Yep.
sense.
Yep.
Let's dive into some of your field stories. Ukraine, let's start there because I guess I never would have thought about the necessity for vets, but there's a
Mm,
huge need, especially during
huge.
a war. So how did you even stumble upon that opportunity for Ukraine?
Yeah, it was about 3 weeks into the war. So what are we talking? 2.5, 3.5, 2.5 years ago.
Hmm.
And it was only 3 weeks into the war. Everyone was so devastated. And I had heard about how veterinarian charities were slowly getting together to get ready to go to the border, to the Polish Ukraine border. Now, one of the great things about me going by myself, I pay for it. My daughter comes with me, and sometimes, and so there's no paperwork. I don't have to get like legal documents signed about liability, so I can go very, very quickly. And with Ukraine, the issue was people were fleeing the country into Poland, eventually hoping to go to Germany and Italy and other safe countries, and they had their animals with them. And sometimes the animals were injured or sick, but often the animals just didn't have up to date rabies vaccines, or they didn't have the paperwork. Who runs
Right.
from a war and says, "Oh wait, I got to grab the paperwork"? And Poland and these other countries didn't want to take these animals if they weren't vaccinated. So I was able to help the humans escape this dangerous war by taking care of their animals so that they could leave. I don't know about you. I'm not leaving my country if I can't take my pets. And these people were the same. So that's how it started. And, it was like on a Sunday when I texted my kids Hey, just so you guys know, your dad's probably going to the Polish-Ukraine border in a week, maybe. My daughter was on a backpacking trip on her own through Europe where she was backpacking and volunteering as well. And she replied back, "Well, I'm in Spain. Get me a ticket for $200 and I'll meet you there." Which is what she's like. She's you can count on her, and she's adventurous like me. And we were on a plane within 5 days.
Wow.
Now, when we were there, and we primarily stayed right at the border, and we did do one day into Lviv. I fell in love with the people, and when I came back and I saw again more just trauma and more horrible stories, I then decided in July, so 2 summers ago, to 3 summers ago, I think, to head back. But this time I went by myself because I went deep into the war zone, into Kharkiv, and worked with an animal rescue group there. And they were basically, all the vets had fled, and they were taking care of these animals that some of them just needed care. Other ones had been trapped in buildings that had been bombed. Unfortunately, some had been purposely shot. So yeah, they needed a veterinarian, and I guess I was their guy.
I would assume the entire time you were there, you had safety concerns because there was no guarantee that you were safe, so to speak. We'll put that in air quotes.
Yeah, it was scary. I'd done a lot of research, and I'd kind of talked myself into, well, only 10,000 people, and most of them are in the actual army or dying in a country of whatever it was, 10 million. But I was sort of talking myself into it. There were family members. My brother, I love him very much. My big brother's always looking out for me. He refused to talk to me because he was so upset. And he's talking to me now. As soon as I got back, he was like, "Welcome back. Glad you're safe. You're an idiot." I actually had like the night before I was leaving for Kharkiv, I started getting hiccups, and which sounds funny at first, and it was until I was having hiccups all night, nonstop. And I did all these different, treatments, and I ended up finding if I swallowed large volumes of vinegar, it would create this vagal response, this sort of reboot of my diaphragm and stop the hiccups temporarily. Well, what I
Hmm.
discovered was that is a pre-stress response that the body
Wow.
has. And it was weird. You land into Poland. I then took a bus, like a van, privately owned by one of the rescuers I had worked with previously. I actually helped through donations by that bus. Literally the second we drove into Ukraine, my hiccups stopped. And it was like my body realized we're in a country at war now. There's no more time for this.
Hmm.
But there were safety issues. I came with a vest, a flak vest, a helmet. Um, and there was a time where a missile landed a couple hundred meters from my apartment. And like an idiot, I was filming out the window because there were alarms prior to that from a previous explosion. So there's a pretty interesting video on Instagram, on my Instagram account, where it happens. And yeah, it was scary. But the big thing is, I was only there for 10 days. There are people still there. The people I worked with, Animal Rescue Kharkiv, are still there. They refuse to leave, and unfortunately, it's become the new normal.
Yeah. Do you think that going to Ukraine had any kind of emotional toll on you? And maybe, emotional with respect to having more empathy towards people or animals, or on the flip side of that, emotionally affected in such a way that maybe you had nightmares or couldn't sleep, or, what kind of effect was that?
Yeah, yeah, great question, and I'll apologize in advance, or not apologize. I will warn you in advance. I may get emotional talking about this. Um, the I had nightmares while I was there. It was definitely a stressful situation. There were times where I was doing surgery, and the bombs would land so close that the clinic would shake, like a subway was going underneath it. And at one point, I asked one of the volunteers who spoke English. I was like, "How do we know if this lands too close that we're in trouble?" And he basically said, if it lands so close that we're in trouble, you're not going to have to worry about it. You're going to be obliterated. You're going to be
Wow.
gone in a second. And okay, I guess I got to keep doing what I'm doing. When I came back, I definitely had more sympathy. I mean, all of these trips make me appreciate the life that I live. I create great friendships out of it. I learn a lot. I learn about new cultures. And especially with the second trip to Ukraine, when I came back, my teammates, coworkers, my wife, they all said you're different, like you're calmer. And the normal stresses didn't bother me. Now, unfortunately, I did have nightmares when I came back, and there were some pretty classic signs of PTSD. I had some great advice prior to from a friend who's a war journalist, like a war correspondent, and he's like, "You're going to see stuff and experience stuff you're not prepared for." He's like, "Get ready to talk to somebody. Get ready to talk to a
Yeah.
therapist." So I had it lined up, but like our trip after Ukraine was to India during Diwali, the Festival of Lights. We actually filmed
Hmm.
a documentary. It's going to be, I just signed a deal with an American broadcaster. I can't talk about who, but eventually it'll be available. Maybe I'll come on again and talk about it.
Yeah.
But during these fireworks, my daughter was there, and she was like, this is stressing you out. I can tell, because I was sort of jumpy. So
Huh.
it's had an effect, but I've learned to deal with it, and I've recovered, and I've sought help, and it has definitely made me a more empathetic and understanding person.
Yeah. I think that's amazing, especially since you went back a second time. You knew what you were walking into and you still chose to do it. So I think that says a lot about you and your character. And, I just think we need more people like you, especially people who are willing to help the innocent animals who are on the ground who have no one else. They just have a select few people like yourself to help them.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate that.
So you mentioned their India trip that was after Ukraine. So tell us about the India trip. When was that and what was kind of that call to action?
Yeah, I mean, there were actually two India trips. The first one, both to Hyderabad, which is like middle south in the Telangana district. Not a tourist place at all. It's like in the middle of nowhere. There's no beaches. There's no nice temples. But I had known some people who had lived there and who'd grown up there, so there was some infrastructure there and some contacts that I could make. The first one was about 7 years ago. And it was actually my daughter's first trip out of North America. She was like 17 years old, and I took her to India. And we worked with Animal Rescue, Animal Warriors Conservation Group. We worked with them again 2.5 years ago when we did Diwali. And the first trip was just a call for adventure and for volunteer. And we had both of those. We volunteered a lot, and we had some amazing adventure. Whereas the second one, again, I had been chasing this TV show dream, and I'd been working with a buddy of mine who's a director, and we'd had some sizzle reels made, and we came like so close. We had our verbally greenlit this show. My dream was coming true, and then something would happen, and it would get canceled. And so the joke was, life is short, especially if you go to Kharkiv and almost get hit with a missile. Maybe I'll take out a second mortgage on my house and finance a documentary, which is why we went back. And yes, we were volunteering, but we were going to show the story of the Festival of Lights, this gorgeous 5-day festival of good overcoming evil, kind of like Christmas for the Hindu culture. But these fireworks hurt animals, and we were dealing with animals that were burned. We were dealing with animals that were frightened, and one dog fell down a well, and I had to rappel down into the well. Some rappelling and mountaineering climbing experience and whatnot. So it was both the call to action was to help and to get the story out in film format of this festival and of the Animal Warriors group that we worked with and the wonderful work that they do.
On that trip to India, would you say you were working mostly with dogs or were you seeing other animals as well?
Yeah, I mean, it was probably 70% street dogs, which we learned they don't call stray or homeless because they live on the street. They're happy on the street. They're community dogs that are cared for by everyone in that sort of block and cared for very, very well and loved very much. But there was a time where I had to do a procedure and a rescue on a giant fruit bat that had been wrapped up by manja wire, which is kind of like kite wire. So they also have these kite festivals. And unfortunately, then the kites are cut and the wire gets caught up on trees. And much like string foot, which is a disorder of pigeons and birds that we see here, where they get pieces of hair or string around their digits, this bat was hanging from a tree upside down, trapped by this manja wire. So we had to examine the bat. There was a rhesus monkey that had been hit by a car that we had to do surgery on its jaw, on its head, unfortunately on its arm as well. We had to do an amputation on its arm. That was the first time I'd done a primate surgery. And then, a cattle egret, so a little white snowy bird kind of thing. So there's a little bit of everything. Even a rescue elephant we looked at on the first trip that was at the zoo. That had been, some elephants are kept almost like work animals
Hmm.
in the farming community, and most of them are treated incredibly well. They're revered for the help that they can do. This one was not treated well, so it was rescued and living at the zoo, and had like a skin lesion that had to be looked at. So we did a little bit of everything.
Yeah. That it sounds like fun. I mean, fun in a unique way. You're helping, you're having these different experiences and adventures. And I know you have a ton of adventures, but there's one
Yeah.
more that's top of mind, and it's Greece
Mm.
during the wildfires, which, I mean, that's pretty risky in and of itself. So tell us a little bit about that Greece trip and how that went down.
Yeah, and we were smart this time. It was after the wildfires, so we were not allowed in until, all the fires were put out. But this originally started out as primarily a vacation. Most of my trips, zero vacation. It's all volunteer
Hmm.
work. But my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, is Greek, and she has family there. So we went to Athens, but I couldn't go without volunteering. So I had a 2-day volunteer stint with Nine Lives Cat Rescue of Athens. So basically, the street cats were getting vaccinated with the Acropolis behind us. The
Yeah.
area where medicine and philosophy was created. I like to think that the fates and the spirits of these philosophers were watching over us. But unfortunately, there had been a wildfire that had destroyed this community. 80 people dead, a couple thousand homes gone. And so a couple of days after, we called an audible and changed my plans, and we went in, and we had to catch and treat and sort of keep animals that had been homeless, who'd become orphaned, I guess, or homeless. Cats, dogs. I treated my first goat for the first time ever. The farmer was a retired cardiologist, so that made it easy. I spoke a little bit of Greek at that point. I speak quite a bit more now as I'm learning, but it was so impactful because one of the rescuers, her aunt, unfortunately, had perished in the fire. Her aunt was a cat rescuer who, like a lot of these cat rescuers, a lot of the animals they've kept are disabled, blind, missing a limb. And she had
Hmm.
escaped from the fire, but then went back to save her animals and unfortunately perished. So it was very emotional for everybody. And
Hmm.
yeah, it's sort of again, it just strengthened my resolve that there are so many wonderful people all around the world rescuing animals from their community, and they appreciate me coming, and it just gives me a passion for life and for my career. So
Yeah. And what do you think keeps you going through all of this? What keeps you coming back and continuing to volunteer?
yeah, I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the volunteering so much so that 7 years ago, I started volunteering 1 day a week at a local wildlife place. I actually only did it to learn about wildlife because I didn't have any experience. It was only supposed to be for 6 months, 1 day a week. It's been
Hmm.
7 years. I'm still there. I'm going tomorrow.
Yeah.
So when this comes out, I'll be dealing with a bald eagle or a deer or something cool like that. And the fact is, it is cool. Like, this reminded me of what I loved about animals as a child. Dogs and cats are amazing. I could be so happy just being a dog and cat vet. But to be able to pin the broken wing bone of a bald eagle and then release it back into the wild on the Niagara River a couple minutes after it bites me to say thanks for your help, true story, or again releasing this giant fruit bat or helping this monkey out in India. I mean, this is what kids' dreams are made of. And
Yeah.
the nice thing is I found my calling. I'm only 52, or I'll be 52 next week. I'm going to be working till I'm 65, 70 probably. I really like this, but I will retire eventually, and then I will travel, and I'm going to find places that have surfing and animal rescues. Put those two
Yeah.
together, and I'm living my dreams. So it's nice knowing what the future holds.
Yeah. So, and I should have asked this earlier, whenever you're not volunteering and traveling, do you work just at a traditional vet practice in the
Yeah,
States?
yeah.
Okay.
It's in Toronto. It's in Canada.
Okay.
I'm here right now. Like I'm in one of the exam rooms. And I'm the only vet here right now. This is my clinic. So if a critical emergency walks through the door, we are putting a pause on this. But it's going to be fine. Knock on wood. Yeah, it's I bought this practice 25 years ago. Pardon me. And it's cats and dogs. That's it. However, because I now work with this wildlife place, last week we had a raccoon that came in that needed paw surgery or hand surgery. Most of my work is at that rescue, but we occasionally, people know me now. People know me as the worldwide vet and the crazy guy that takes in wildlife. So we get a little bit of everything now.
Yeah. So, for anyone listening, whether they're a vet tech, or just, an everyday person, do you have any advice for how they can get involved and give back and maybe find these similar kind of volunteer opportunities?
Yeah, there's so many ways. First of all, you don't have to travel. That is the ultimate goal, or at least that's the grand vision. But you can do something as simple as building a bat box or a bird box in your backyard, or if you're in a cold environment in the wintertime, building an insulated little box for, say, the possums or the raccoons or whatever. Obviously, volunteer at your local shelter, volunteer at your local animal rescue place. Now, the important thing is, and this is sort of something that's near and dear to my heart, and also frustrates me. If you rescue an injured wild animal, do not try and treat it yourself. I don't even try and treat it myself. I stabilize it, which is
Hmm.
often just putting it in a box, putting it in the dark, and letting it calm down, because fear can
Right.
kill wild animals. And then I call the experts, which are the wildlife rehabbers, a certified wildlife rehabber. So as cute as it is to try and nurse back to health a baby squirrel, the odds are things will be much, much more successful if you get someone who's an expert. And then as far as volunteering, start slow.
Hmm.
I didn't really start slow, but I had some skills that a lot of people may not have, and I had the ability to leave my business. My kids were out of the house, et cetera, et cetera. You can go on your regular vacation, and before you go, see if there's an animal rescue or some other thing that you want to volunteer for. Help build a school. Again, walk the dogs at a shelter. Ask them what they need, and maybe bring them a bunch of e-collars.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
just do that one day, and if you like it, then do 2 days, then do 3 days, and eventually, if you're able to do the traveling, it can become like a mainstay to your air quotes vacation lifestyle, that you can go and do this work.
Yeah. And with everything that you've seen, asking for more advice for the listeners,
Hmm.
you've seen all kinds of emergencies from war to fires to probably, floods, everything you can think of.
Hmm.
Are there some key takeaways for emergency preparedness for your everyday pet parent? Things that you think we should just always kind of have prepared or be ready for?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, always have your animal microchipped. Like if it's your regular pet, have it microchipped, and make sure the microchip is registered to your house, to your cell phone.
Yeah.
Often people forget to do that. Have a tag on your cat or dog, and all you need is like its name and your phone number. That
Hmm.
way, if you're taking it on a vacation to another country, even, or to another state, and it escapes, people don't have to try and call a vet and, oh, this is the rabies tag from the, wait a minute, this vet clinic's from another state over. No, they can just text the number or call the number and help you find your animal. Have the paperwork handy, and have them fully vaccinated. It makes a difference. We're lucky enough in North America that we're never going to have to scramble to Mexico, or us Canadians scramble up to Alaska if there's a war breaks out. We're staying where we are. But make sure they're vaccinated is just so important. And then finally, know where the wildlife rehabbers are in your area. You can Google it. It's super simple. And as soon as you see an animal in trouble, call them. You'd be amazed that they will have a team of volunteers to come and rescue that turtle that's hurt on the side of the road, and they'll know what to do with it. So just do the research before you need to.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. So if anyone wants to find you, your website, social media, tell us everywhere we can find you. And we also have to keep an eye out for everything you're going to be releasing. So we're going to need to know this.
Yeah, we got a lot going on. If you're in Canada, you can see my documentary now. It's already, you can find me on Instagram, and I can give you the link, but it's in my bio. My Instagram is at drcliff worldwide vet, so Dr. Cliff worldwide vet. Website is drcliff.ca. Instagram is pretty much where I'm at. That's where you can find me the easiest. Check out my podcast, Vet Life with Dr. Cliff. I should have you on it, Brittany, sometime.
Yeah.
We can talk about how you got into this. And yeah, my documentary in the next couple of months is going to be available in the U.S. And then in 14 months, I've got a book coming out. I've got we're a legit publisher, ECW Publishing, worldwide. It's going to be audio, digital, obviously print. So there's a lot going on. I'm a busy guy, and a lot of fun stories to talk about.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, thank you for coming on, and thank you for everything you do. You're doing everything literally. So thank you so much. And I'm excited for the listeners to get to check out your documentary.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me, Brittany.
Thank you for tuning in to the Canine Culture Podcast. Please make sure you subscribe to the Canine Culture Podcast on your favorite podcast platform, and make sure you're following us on social media. If you have any recommendations, any topics that you'd like to hear, if you know of any guests that would be good for the show, or if you yourself want to be a guest, please reach out to us. Send us an email at canineculturepodcast@gmail.com, or send us a direct message on social media. Thank you for listening, and please share this with any of your dog-loving friends.